It's Wednesday, and welcome to the Todd Veinotte Show. My name's Dan Alstrand, again filling in for Todd this week. The post-Thanksgiving Day weekend hangover is in full effect, isn't it? Clayton Park to the Rick House studio right here inside of Young Tower, 37 minutes today. Traffic and transportation has emerged as a major issue during this municipal election campaign, and for good reason. I guess I'll just never get used to sitting into traffic, and we'll ask our first guest about that when we get to her in just a second. If you remember back a few weeks ago when Premier Houston was sitting in our studio, he was talking about the Chignecto Isthmus. He said he'd dig in his heels on this contention that the feds should pay the shot to future-proof that vital link. Well, he also said the work would go ahead anyway, and it has. Announced yesterday that work on that berm will get started. We're going to dig into that. More calls for the Prime Minister to step down from inside his own caucus. This time it's PEI MP Sean Casey. I wonder how much traction this is going to have, and if we'll see any of our Nova Scotia Liberal MPs join the call for Justin Trudeau's ouster. Also yesterday, the Houston government committed to another 2 years of the Yarmouth to Bar Harbor ferry. The budget that subsidizes that link this year, I think, was $21 million. We don't know the final numbers yet, but there was a 20% increase in passenger use on it this year. When we open up the phone lines after noon today, my question to you is it worth $42 million plus to continue to spend provincial money on that Maine to Yarmouth ferry? Again, those lines will open up at noon today because 11 o'clock, of course, on Wednesdays, we welcome house calls and Dr. John Gillis. Thanks to Vanessa Vandenez on the other side of the glass for everything that she does every day to keep the show moving forward. And speaking of house calls, I know our next guest is doing a lot of those lately as the campaign continues. We're continuing our focus on the candidates for this upcoming municipal election, which is just like Saturday. It's almost here. And we're very pleased to welcome into the studio this morning to kick things off, candidate for mayor, Pam Lovelace. How are you?
Good morning. Happy Wacky Wednesday.
It is Wacky Wednesday. Wow. I've asked every single person that has sat in front of me during this segment, Pam, and I will ask you this question. Why did you decide that this was the time for you to change gears and switch from representing District 13 and running for mayor?
Sure. Great question. So District 13 changed completely. So it's now Prospect Road, St. Margaret's Bay. So I don't live in District 13 anymore. So I, committed to 4 years. So I didn't feel right about running for a district that I don't live in. That being said, having been deputy mayor in my second year, I was looking forward to fixing some of the problems. And there are some massive, massive problems. City Hall is broken. Halifax Transit is broken. We've got serious issues on our streets, public safety, violence in our schools, and so on and so forth. And I put my name forward because over the last 4 years, I've put forward 50 initiatives, more than 50 initiatives, to fix issues that are longstanding legacy challenges that have been ignored. And it's like an onion. Dan, you've got a problem and it just continues to accelerate. And then there's more unintended consequences on that. We've got rural communities that are starving for economic development. We've got land use bylaws that haven't been updated since the 1980s. And there just hasn't been a comprehensive view as far as how can we move this capital region forward, not just into this century, but the next one. So I'm focused on the next generation. I'm looking at the next 50 years. And in order to do that, we've got to solve these legacy challenges and we've got to become stronger so that we are more resilient, because our economy right now, as you just mentioned with traffic, people are spending hours in traffic when they could be much more productive. Our quality of life is sinking because we've added tens of thousands of more people in population, but we haven't adjusted the system.
Pam, I read last week or the week before that you had suggested that you could take that 30% reduction in taxes by removing the provincial portion out. Can you do that? Is that even legal?
Yeah, so we've actually already started that process. So all 49 municipalities are represented by the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities. And over the past 3 years as a board member, I was very proud to be a part of that group to modernize and renegotiate our service exchange agreement. And with that came the removal, like you won't see this on your property tax bill anymore. You won't see the corrections charge and you won't see the public housing debt charge. Those have been removed from your property tax bill. So the process of removing the province from the property tax bill is already in play. And keep in mind, we already pay the highest income taxes in the country. We already pay the province the highest sales tax. So when HRM is looking at this unrealistic and antiquated property tax system, we can only change that with the province on board. And the province knows that a strong HRM is a strong Nova Scotia. They need to work with the municipality to make sure that we can grow economically, socially, that we have a vibrant community where people can live in. And obviously, we've got over 200 communities all across HRM that all need services and need representation. So we need equity in the entire tax system. And that's why I'm advocating for tax reform.
Pam, the relationship between HRM Council and the province at times has been, what's the word, strained maybe is the way to describe that. What is your plan to make it work better?
Well, that's a great question. So we have seen over the years, going back to NDP government with Darrell Dexter, Stephen McNeil government from 2013 on, there was nothing really going on between HRM and the provincial government. It wasn't until 2021 when Premier Houston's government came in and said, okay, we are interjecting because we need these things to move forward. You've got to go faster in development. You've got to make sure that communities are growing faster and we have the housing that we need. And while HRM, of course, said, wait a minute, all of a sudden now you're paying attention to us. We've got pages and pages of legislative requests that we've asked for over many, many decades. And so now we're at a point where we have, because I pushed forward on the Memorandum of Understanding with homelessness so that we can all get on the same page with regards to who is doing what. Let's not duplicate tasks. Let's set shared goals. And so for the first time, we're seeing the number of people in tents actually drop because we're working collaboratively. So I just saw Premier Houston last night, got a great working relationship with him and many ministers. We're at a point now where we have no choice but to work together. And we can't work together until we set shared goals. So that's my aim, is to make sure that we're building up Nova Scotia and this capital region to become vibrant, economically sustainable, and safe places for all of us to live.
Pam, you say that the number of people living in tents is dropping. Is that a two-part question? One, is that because the province is building shelters? And two, we're seeing the number of people who are on the list grow. Every time I get the new list, there's more people that are either living in tents or are living couch surfing or wherever else. What's your plan to address homelessness in HRM?
So for the first time in 30 years, the provincial government is actually investing in building public housing. They haven't done that for a long time. You cannot grow your population and expect that you're not going to have to invest in public housing. So the first thing is that we've got more tiny homes. We've got more of a concentrated, comprehensive intake system that's actually working with the nonprofit organizations, the HRM and the province of Nova Scotia. Community Services has stepped up. And also we have a better viewpoint as far as where are these people coming from. So in 2021, I initiated the Lived Experience Advisory Committee, people who actually have lived experience with homelessness. And they were able to advise council to show us where the gaps are, especially with chronic homelessness. People who've spent, 5, 6, 7 years without housing. Those people need very different care than someone who's just been rent-evicted. In addition to that, I think we can follow the path that other municipalities have followed, which is to actually get a bylaw in place to reduce rent evictions, to ensure safe housing, to make sure that people
How does the city do that?
Yeah, so other cities have looked at ways to actually verify the system. So if somebody's saying, yeah, I'm kicking this person out because my family member's moving in, when in fact they're kicking a person out of their housing because they're bringing in somebody and charging them a higher rent. So, we do need better controls to manage those bad landlords. At the same time, we need to be able to support the good landlords and the people in particular who are building and supporting and maintaining community housing, which is affordable, low-income housing. So it's a large spectrum of housing, but at the same time, what we need is a person in the mayor's seat that's looking at the big picture and breaking down the silos so that we are all working together better.
Pam, I mentioned off the top of the program this morning, it was 37 minutes in traffic coming from Clayton Park. Yeah. You have been focusing a lot on transportation and on transit. I guess let's begin with transit and what's the solution? How do we fix that we haven't already tried? And essentially has failed?
So transit is an evolution, just like any other system. So we had metro transit for many, many years. Prior to that, we had trams, right? We had all kinds of different transportation options. We were a much smaller population at that point. So we moved from metro transit to Halifax Transit. And now I think it's time for us to grow bigger and create a Capital Region Transportation Commission, recognizing that the neighboring municipalities are the ones who are sending in tens of thousands of people as well. So they don't have any options but a single occupancy vehicle. So let's get park and ride set up with express routes in those neighboring municipalities along our border, working with them, because there's no point in East Hants creating its own transit system when in fact we've already got one. We can share it. We can integrate with community transit, so you're only paying once. And we can also integrate with people like Kings County Transit so that they're actually connecting into Windsor, into West Hants, and into East Hants, and into HRM. There's ways that other cities have done this, but you have to break down the silos and you have to start working collaboratively. And the only way to do that is to recognize that we need each other. We need to work together. And those folks who are driving into HRM, they're not paying a penny for snow clearing or road maintenance or any property taxes whatsoever, but they're riding on our streets. They're on our bridges. So we believe, I believe, and my supporters believe that it's time for us to put in the short-term solutions, but look long-term and actually begin to consider what will light rail look like. And I'm not talking about Via Rail and commuter rail and CN tracks. I'm talking about the way that Edmonton did it. They had less than 500,000 people. When they started thinking about light rail, they began to plan it, look at what the options are, because the amount of money that we are wasting as regular residents and employers on having people stuck in having people stuck in traffic and not have them on accessible, transit and affordable transit, that's our biggest problem right now. Our productivity is dropping very, very quickly, and more businesses will not look to open up here in HRM.
People have told me that light rail is multi-billions of dollars to do. What is your pitch to the taxpayer who's going to end up having to pick up that bill?
So that's a great point, because sometimes when we look at the costs, we don't think about the opportunity lost. And the opportunity lost right now is to recognize that we need a solution, because traffic congestion will continue to grow if we continue to support people moving here and encouraging people to move here, but only give them one tiny option. They need more options. So if you consider, let's say, hey, it's too expensive to build a hospital. It's too expensive to build that bridge. It's too expensive to invest in the isthmus, for example. Then we've lost an opportunity to actually look into the future to consider a better, congestion-free city.
That being said, can HRM shoulder, and the numbers I'm hearing anywhere from $20 to $35 billion project? Like, that's a big capital project.
So it depends on what you're talking about, right? Are you talking about light rail all across the province for $35 billion? That's not what I'm proposing. I'm proposing that we actually look at the main corridors of Highway 102 between East Hants, the airport, and into HRM and into Bedford. Because don't forget, we've got the fast ferry going on board here. That's coming into play. But that fast ferry is just going to create an incredible amount of congestion at the bottom of Hamas Plains Road and Bedford Highway, because people need a place to park their cars because they have no other way to get into the ferry. So I do think we need to start thinking a little bit bigger about where that background traffic is coming from. How can we reduce the number of single occupancy vehicles on highway number 102, 101, so on, and find ways that we can actually begin to plan. So any number that anyone puts out at this point is just a pie in the sky. We don't know what the number is because we don't have a plan. And so unless we accept the fact that we need to plan in the next 50 years for light rail, well, we'll never have it, which means we'll continue to drive people away, because your 37-minute drive to work is going to turn out to be 55 minutes or 90 minutes, and you'll just give up and say it's much easier for me to move away.
Pam, active transportation is a hot topic on this show a lot. What's your thoughts on the integrated mobility plan and those ever talked about bike lanes?
So the bike lanes, we have to remember that HRM commits 17% of all costs for the bike lane. So it is a federal government program.
Yeah, and I agree with that part.
Just let me get to this point,
Sure.
though. When the federal government reaches out their hands and says, here's a program for you to take. We don't necessarily have to take that money. So after the wildfire, I asked for the bike lane funding to go into egress because I felt that egress at that point in time was a much better priority, a much more important priority for subdivisions that only have one way in and out. The response from the federal government was, no, you can't take bike lane money and put it into other infrastructure. And so that's our problem, is that we are not pushing back at the federal government or the provincial government and getting everybody on the same page to say, wait a minute, our priorities right now is that we have dozens of subdivisions that are in high wildfire risk area and they need more than one way out. So let's set priorities based on what it is that our needs are. Made in Halifax solutions. That's what I'm focused on.
I get it, but all of that money comes from one taxpayer, right?
That's right, it does.
The federal government comes from me, the provincial government comes from me, and my municipal taxes come from me.
That's right.
And my feeling is that the people of HRM don't want bike lanes.
Well, there are people who do want bike lanes, but the issue is that HRM continues and other cities continue to accept the funding and go after the programming. And those programming, I believe, the programs actually need to shift to look at emergency management. They need to look at egress. They need to look at higher priorities, including shoreline mitigation, because we've got houses in Ecum that have sunk into the ocean. Now, this is a very real problem. So I think what we need to do is actually push back at senior government and say, no, you come to the table and work with us on what our priorities are and stop telling us what our priorities should be. Housing Accelerator Fund is another example of that. Federal government coming in saying, here you go, take this money because these are our priorities. And now what we've done is created down zoning on Roby Street, for example. It's going to cost a lot more money because that land is worth more if we're going to create bus rapid transit lanes. So again, made in HRM solutions, that's my focus. We need to push back on senior government, and I'm going to create a capital infrastructure commission with federal government, utilities, provincial government, everybody at the table so that we're building smarter, that we're actually growing stronger because we cannot do this alone. We need senior government to work with us.
Pam, how do we find out more about you and your platform?
You can go to pamlovelace.ca, and I just want to give a shout out to the 68,000 people that have voted already as of 9:30 this morning. Great job. Thanks for that. But keep getting those votes out there for Pam Lovelace. Let's get some change and say no to status quo.
Pam, I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Dan.
You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. We're back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. Dan Holstrand along with you here on it's Wednesday already, right? I almost forgot. I must have said Tuesday. These short weeks are always messing with my mind. Anyway, still lots to talk about on the program. Please welcome to our show, our next guest from Dalhousie University in the Food Analytics Lab, Dr. Sylvain Charlebois, the food professor. Sylvain, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I got a release from you today suggesting that a whole bunch of milk is getting wasted and the blame falls directly on supply management. Am I reading into that?
Do you remember this one dairy farmer last year in Ontario filming himself dumping 30,000 liters of milk?
I do. I do remember it.
And that video went viral. And about a few weeks later, I had a couple of colleagues that I actually didn't know, but they knew I studied supply management. One colleague from the University of Michigan and the other one from Europe, Thomas Elliott and Benjamin Goldstein, and they asked me if I wanted to do a study on milk dumping in Canada. I said, well, there's no data. And then they said, well, I think we can actually figure that one out. And so we actually started to crack all the data available, so milk produced, milk sold, milk discard due to quality, consumption for calves on farm, all of the things that can actually impact milk accessing markets. And so we were able to figure out the one thing that Canadian dairy farmers don't ever disclose, which is the amount of milk being dumped every single year.
Why is it dumped, Sylvain? Why dump it down the drain?
Because it's cheap, it's easy, it's hidden. When you basically dump milk on the farm, you can do it away from camera. So when dairy farmers tell you, well, we're not dumping, we're not wasting, well, there's no evidence, there's no proof, there's nothing. And so the data basically is telling us that there's anywhere between 6 to 10 billion liters of milk being dumped a decade in Canada. So anywhere between 600 million to 1 billion liters a year being dumped in Canada. And there's no disclosure, no transparency, and there's no strategy to recover that milk in order to support food banks, for example, or even to support a strategic reserve, as we do with butter. We have a strategic reserve for butter in Canada. Why not do that for powdered milk, for example, through the Canadian Dairy Commission?
So, as I understand it, and you're obviously the expert on this, the reason why the farmers are dumping the milk is because that they're over their quota. Correct? Is that why they're doing it?
Well, so I don't think it would be reasonable to think that there will never be a surplus. I mean,
right. No, I get it.
Cows aren't robots.
Yep.
So they will produce milk, and it's actually perfectly fine to have surpluses, but not to have a strategy. The thing, Dan, that we have in Canada is called supply management. Supply management can actually eliminate all waste, unlike what we see in the United States. In the United States, they do dump quite a bit, but they don't have supply management. In Canada, we have a highly coordinated, federally sanctioned regime called supply management. We can actually eliminate all food waste, and that's kind of the message we're sending. The core system is not the problem; it's the lack of will.
So, again, is it because I'm Farmer Dan and I have a quota to produce 10 liters of milk? We're just using crazy math, right? And my cows have a good year and they produce 15 gallons of milk. So because I can't sell that extra 5 gallons of milk because of my quota, that goes down the drain. Am I right?
So you either produce too much.
Yeah.
Because of the weather, because of how you're feeding your cows, or sometimes you get a phone call from the board saying, you know what, demand is down, dump.
Really?
And that's exactly what happened to Jerry, the dairy farmer in Ontario, who was actually asked to dump 30,000 liters. Now, of course, the dairy farmers in Ontario at the time said, well, this is an exception. The guy's incompetent. We don't really dump milk at all. And of course, after those comments, I did get a lot of emails from dairy farmers in Ontario telling me that they are dumping on a regular basis. And I used to work on dairy farms when I was a kid, and we dumped milk all the time. So to deny the problem is really the biggest problem as far as I'm concerned. I acknowledge that there is a problem. It's chronic. We dump milk in Canada. So what do we do with it? That's really the key. A few months ago, we were running out of baby formula across the country. That's not acceptable for a country like Canada. We should actually come up with a strategy to do something with those surpluses.
So then, and I'm still trying to get my head wrapped around this because that number is like 6.8 billion.
I know, it's mind-boggling. Of course. I couldn't believe it. Because Thomas Elliott is the person who really crunched the numbers along with Benjamin Goldstein. I just basically tagged along. They're environmental scientists. I'm more about food security. So their take, if you actually read the article, and by the way, if people are doubting anything here, this article was peer-reviewed, and it's published in one of the most prestigious environmental science journals in the world, so you know. It
was published back on the 5th or 6th of October, if you want to go and dig and look for it. So then with a milk supply, we're almost out of time, with a milk supply that is managed like it is with farmers only, getting a quota and only being able to produce X, how do we get that number so wrong? Like that 6.8 billion liters is a lot of milk.
Lack of awareness, lack of political pressure, and of course, politicians don't really want to criticize dairy farmers at all. Look at what's going on in Ottawa with Bill C-282. It's a bill that it's hard to vote against. The Bloc is basically asking Prime Minister Trudeau to endorse Bill C-282, which would give immunity to supply management and dairy for future trade talks. So it's a really sensitive issue, and instead of just saying, let's say supply management, it's perfect as it is. It's a good system, but it's not perfect. We can make it better.
So, Van, just before we go, hypothetical question: If I wave my magic wand and supply management disappears today, does that 6.8 billion liters end up on the market, and does milk price come down?
Actually, there would be more surpluses, to be honest. I think the supply management system is a good one. The core system is a good one, but we need to acknowledge that there are some deficiencies there.
Sylvain, I appreciate your time, sir.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
That is Sylvain Charlebois from the Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University. We need to stop down and take a break for the news. Blake's going to tell us what's going on in the world. And when we come back, a conversation with the leader of the Provincial Liberal Party, Zach Churchill. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. Dan Alstrand along with you. Lots of emails rolling into the program today after our conversation with Pam Lovelace. Might be something you want to talk about when we open up the telephone lines. Don't forget that's going to happen at noon today, because at 11 o'clock it's House Calls with Dr. John Gillis. So if you have a medical-related question, this is an opportunity for you to get those answered. So just think about it, and in about 25 minutes or so, we'll open up those telephone lines and we'll welcome you in to House Calls. But first, this release from the Liberals yesterday, as the provincial Liberals, that is, as the Houston government forces thousands of public servants back to the office without any rationale. Nova Scotia Liberals announced their modern plan to improve productivity and support workers across the province. According to this press release, Nova Scotia Liberal government would deliver a two-pronged approach to supporting workers in Nova Scotia by bringing back flexible work arrangements for public servants who can work remotely and removing location requirements on government job postings where possible, so employees have the freedom to live and work in any region in Nova Scotia. Please welcome to the program the leader of the Nova Scotia Liberal Party, Zach Churchill. Zach, how are you?
Great, Dan. Thanks so much for having me back on.
Let's begin there. We had a brisk conversation about the work from home sort of setup, and most of the callers I took yesterday thought that people should be back in the office. Why do you think that that's a bad idea?
Look at the congestion in the city right now. You know, it's not productive to have people in their car for 2 hours driving in from the suburbs. We've got childcare wait times that are crazy right now, and a lot of working families aren't even going to get their kids into daycare. So we've got these two big issues that are affecting people's ability to work. And also, we think that when it comes to provincial jobs, where it makes sense to do this, you know, this is policy, research, call center work. These jobs should be available to people that live outside of the city. And this would make jobs more accessible to people who work in rural Nova Scotia. And we think, you know, it's 2024 when big companies like Deloitte and others are doing this, when small business operators are running their businesses from their home. It's time that we get out of, you know, the 20th century and how we think about doing work in government.
Zach, I think that makes, you know, I think people can understand that. That being said, would it not be a better focus to try and fix some of the transportation issues with the city rather than just to keep people home?
Well, how are you doing that when the population's growing at a rate that we can't keep up with? You know, allowing 3,500 people right now to work from home where it makes sense, where they're doing work that can be done from home, like research, policy, call center work. Why not allow them to do that? That will alleviate some of the pressure on the roads. It certainly helps with childcare for these working families that can't get childcare. I've talked to childcare operators who have a wait list of 700 kids who will never probably get in to that facility. And again, why not have these jobs that are available for people that live in Nova Scotia who live outside of Halifax? You know, everybody in rural Nova Scotia has always complained about the fact that all the highest paying government jobs are concentrated in Halifax, and it doesn't really need to be that way anymore. And again, when the world is shifting to more remote work, when the private sector, who obviously really cares about efficiency and productivity, is moving in this direction. I don't think we should shy away from it, and I certainly think there's some good policy rationale to do this right now, particularly around the issues with congestion, childcare, and making sure that people who live outside of the city can apply for and do these important jobs in government.
Zach, if you move these jobs off-site, if you put people back into their offices at home or their living rooms or their kitchen tables, would you maintain the same amount of office space that you have downtown, or would you consolidate that?
Well, listen, there's no sense having office space if we don't need it, and that can also save the taxpayers money. Right now, Nova Scotia taxpayers are paying close to $100 million annually on operating leases. So even saving 10% on those leases would be significant. That's it's close to $10 million a year that the taxpayers could save. And again, this call to bring these public servants back to the downtown offices by Tim Houston was not justified. He's presented no rationale for it. And, people have asked why, and there hasn't even been an answer given. And we think certainly there's good reasons to allow this work to continue. Again, we're 2024. We've had people move to Nova Scotia because they're able to do remote work. We've had population growth in rural Nova Scotia, in large part because of remote work opportunities that are out there in the private sector. And we don't have to be look at running government on a 20th century model anymore. And we think this could provide savings. It can deal with, two of the biggest issues that people are certainly dealing with here in Halifax: congestion, long hours in their car, long unproductive hours in their car, and certainly there is a major issue with a childcare shortage right now.
Zach, what do you say to people like the Downtown Halifax Business Commission or the local restaurant, bar, establishment that depend on having office workers in the downtown core?
Well, listen, we understand the concerns there and anticipated it. We certainly don't think, these 3,500 people are going to be the make or break there. The downtown is vibrant. And also, congestion doesn't help these folks either. People are going to get in their cars to head home as quickly as they can to avoid traffic. They're not going to stay in downtown for supper. And
why not?
We think the impact would
I do.
We think the impact would be minimal. Listen, man, working families are going to want to get back and have supper with their kids.
I get it, but they will also, run out for a coffee after work to avoid the traffic, right?
Yeah, listen, no one's going to stop their caffeine addiction as a result of this. And there's also small businesses in these other neighborhoods too. All the small businesses aren't just downtown. All the coffee shops just aren't downtown. They're in these other neighborhoods too. I visited them out in Cole Harbour, Eastern Passage, and other areas, and they certainly appreciate having more people around to eat lunch there and buy coffee. But I mean I think the fundamental rationale for this I think is really, really important. We've got a congestion issue. Everybody I talk to is complaining about it. Tim Houston's putting 3,500 people back on the road into the downtown without providing justification for that. He also didn't say it was to support downtown businesses. We've got hundreds, if not thousands, of families who can't find childcare and have to work from home in order to bring income into their household. And again, I represent rural Nova Scotia. I'm from Yarmouth. One consistent thing I've heard in my 14 years in public office is people who live outside of Halifax feeling it's unfair that they can't apply for jobs that they're qualified for, that are decent paying, and that they can do to contribute to their province. And this would open that up for people. We've seen other governments move whole departments into rural Nova Scotia to deal with this issue. We've seen tourism moved entirely to Windsor. Housing moved entirely to Cape Breton. This is the 21st century. There's a different model to look at now, and we think it only makes sense.
Zach, while I've got you on the line here, you did mention from Yarmouth an announcement yesterday that the provincial government's going to commit to 2 more years of subsidizing the Yarmouth to Maine ferry. Your thoughts on that announcement yesterday?
Well, listen, when the biggest critics of that service, the Houston conservatives, are changing their opinion on that and now all of a sudden have become supporters of that ferry service, I certainly take great satisfaction in that. And I think it's important that people in all parties understand the economic impact of that. This report that we had a progress or status update on showed what we've been saying every single year, what other reports have consistently said, that there is a major net gain to the economy of Nova Scotia as a result of having an international ferry link to one of the biggest tourism markets in the world. And according to this most recent report, it's a return of about $20 million. So that's a good deal. And to have folks that built their political career on criticizing this thing come around and see the benefits, I think is very important, not just for the economy of Western Nova Scotia, but also the tourism economy of the whole province, because we've learned that, again, a lot of these visitors are coming in and making it all the way up to Halifax, to Cape Breton, and spending twice as much as people who drive into the province. And
last question, the Premier yesterday saying, or the Premier's office yesterday saying that work has begun on the Chignecto Isthmus as that fight continues. Your thoughts on the government stance on having the feds pay for that?
Well, I mean, I just think that Houston's playing politics with this instead of just getting the job done. You know, every single major infrastructure project that's funded in Canada is jointly funded by provinces, territories, municipal governments in some cases, and the federal government. So the funding model presented for this, with 50% of it being paid by the federal government, 25 Nova Scotia, 25 New Brunswick, is consistent with how all of these projects are funded across the country. And I think Tim Houston's just trying to pick every fight he can with the Prime Minister for political reasons, instead of getting really critical work done and jobs done, like this isthmus. We are one bad storm away from being disconnected from the rest of the country and our food supply. And I think getting that project done more quickly is more important than whatever the Premier thinks he's going to get from a partisan gain with fighting with the federal government.
Zach, we're out of time. I appreciate yours.
Thank you.
That is the leader of the Nova Scotia Liberal Party, Zach Churchill. Need to stop and take a break. When we come back, the spat between Canada and India will be our focus. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. Back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. Dan Ahlstrand along with you as we roll along here on a Wednesday morning. If you've been following the news as of late, you know that the ongoing spat, I'll call it, between Canada and India has been escalating over the last few days. In fact, a story moving on our website, halifax.citynews.ca, over the last hour or so reads this. The British government says India should cooperate with Canada's investigation into accusations that its government's been involved in an escalating number of violent crimes in Canada. Ottawa expelling 6 Indian diplomats Monday after the RCMP said it had credible evidence that Indian agents played a role in extortion, coercion, and the murder of Canadian citizens on Canadian soil. In a statement, the British Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office says it's in contact with Canada about the serious developments outlined in Canada's investigations. The U.S. State Department said at a news conference on Tuesday that the U.S. has long been asking India to cooperate with Canadian authorities, but stopped short of commenting on the substance of new claims. Very pleased to welcome to the program from Dalhousie University, Dr. Robert Hewish. Dr. Hewish, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me by.
Let's get into the nuts and bolts of this ongoing argument. I guess the first question is this just, saber rattling? Is this just, making it look like we're doing something, or is there some real serious stuff behind it?
Yeah, this is actually a big issue on two fronts. So first off, there's a criminal investigation underway that essentially is mapping out not just a murder, but a network of targeted murders against Canadian citizens who are of Sikh origin. And that is massive, to have a foreign government play a role in the extrajudicial killing of citizens on another country. And now that we know that there's evidence mounting towards that, and it just keeps sort of getting deeper and deeper, we're seeing how this is being handled between Ottawa and Delhi in a very political, very public and very political fashion. Needless to say, the relationships between Ottawa and Delhi have not been great since about 2018. Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Trudeau have not necessarily read each other very well over the past 6 years, and there's been lots of tension there. So we're in a position now where evidence is mounting. The RCMP is making very, very public, very bold statements about these cases and about what needs to happen next to pursue criminal convictions. And it's also taking place on top of also a very public, political and diplomatically fraught situation. And as a result, it's going to be very, very difficult to firstly pursue justice on this case, and secondly, try to mend any diplomatic relationships in the near future.
How bad are those relationships damaged because of this? I mean, expelling ambassadors and diplomats is a rather harsh step, is it not?
It is, and symbolically for sure. And it's not the first time that Canada has pulled back its diplomatic teams. Of course, there was a case a few years back in Havana, Cuba, where the entire Canadian embassy got returned to Ottawa when there was allegations of sonic attacks there. It's also not the first time that Canada's called out another country for foreign interference. Russia and China have also done that. But we're seeing with this case right now in India is something we're calling like transnational aggression, in that it's something where we've got evidence that India has pulled stunts like this in the past, that there's been some 20 assassination attempts of Indian citizens in Pakistan. That's been since 2020. And then we've also got a case in the U.S. that was revealed in November of 2023, where basically Indian diplomats were orchestrating a murder on U.S. soil. So, you know, we've seen these tensions go in the past, but as a middle power, Canada really doesn't have a whole lot in terms of carrots or sticks to try to discipline India in this way. It would be very different if the U.S. or the U.K. even were taking sort of a harsher stance towards India. But for us at the moment, we really don't have a whole lot in terms of calling out Modi government, other than recalling our diplomats and then making it very public on the world stage.
Dr. Hewish, we have obviously a vibrant Indian community in Canada. India is a major trading partner for this country. What does it look like if these tensions don't simmer and they continue to escalate? Could we see some permanent damage?
Yeah, I think so. And this is the thing with India, is very much a rising superpower in its own right. It's a huge player in the world, politically, economically, militarily. Right now, there's even cooperation between India and Russia in some regards, and of course the enormous diaspora community that's around the world. So we've got about 3 million Canadians who are Sikhs in the Sikh diaspora, and that's a big population. It's the largest population of Sikh diaspora in the world, and that's also very conscious in the minds of Mr. Modi, some of his supporters, some of his followers as well. Who tend to, over the past few years, portray the Sikh community as seeking this nationalism to break up India. So if you go into Indian politics, you'll see that the Sikh nation has often been portrayed as sort of something to be feared by Indian nationalists. And without Canada having a solid diplomatic channel to gather information, to help support people through consular affairs who may be traveling back and forth between the two countries, that's going to no longer be business as usual. That's going to be much trickier to try to, one, protect Sikh Canadians here from any sort of transnational repression from India on any given day, or something like what we're seeing with the criminal cases in play. So anytime we start removing diplomats, yeah, it makes a sound political message, but it also makes it much more difficult to keep business as usual. And that's really a problem for a country like Canada, where there's just so many people from the Indian diaspora who live here.
Do you think that we can put enough pressure on in order to get to the resolution that I think we're working towards, and that's getting some criminal prosecution on these cases?
Yeah, there's a chance for that. And the way that we have to sort of go forward, if I was to give advice to any of the top people listening, would be to focus on the judicial, focus on the criminal case, and try to get justice for the crimes that have occurred. And in doing so, work on trying to dismember that network that allowed something like this to occur in the first place. How possibly could foreign diplomats in Ottawa and possibly Vancouver work in a way to orchestrate and partner with criminal gangs in Canada? That needs to be dismembered. And then at the same time, the political tensions between the two heads of state, that needs to be cooled down, right? There's a lot of tension between Mr. Trudeau and Mr. Modi. The way that we're even portrayed and Mr. Trudeau's government's portrayed in India is astonishing. We're definitely headline news in India on a daily basis. And if those sort of political tensions keep getting in the way, it's going to detract from any sort of cooperation that Indian authorities would ever give back to help solve this investigation. In the U.S., just to point to as an example there, it's been the FBI and the State Department that's been leading that conversation, and the White House has been working to try to make sure that the diplomatic channels actually stay open to try to resolve these problems.
Dr. Hewish, I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much indeed.
That is Dr. Robert Hewish from Dalhousie University, an expert on Canada-India relations. We need to stop down. Blake's going to update us on what's going on in the news, and when we come back, we'll open up the telephone lines. It's time for House Calls. Dr. John Gillis will be your guest. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We're back in minutes.
Facts.
Dr. John, you're my medicine man. Dr. John, you're my medicine man.
I don't use no potion. I don't use no pill.
Welcome back to The Todd Veinotte Show. It's Wednesday. It's just after 11 o'clock, and that means it's time for House Calls. Telephone number is, as it always is, 902-405-6000. If you have a medical-related question, if you have a concern about your health, if you maybe want a second opinion on something, this is your opportunity to join the program and speak with Dr. John. Vanessa working behind the scenes to reach the good doctor, to get him locked into the system so that we can continue on with our show. So again, the telephone number is 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Just very quickly, before we get Dr. John on the line, this just in. Where's the sounder? This just in. No, I'm kidding, Vanessa. Made her jump. The province announcing the government will provide a new retirement benefit to doctors as part of ongoing efforts to expand recruitment and retention initiatives in Nova Scotia. The support is through annual contributions that doctors put toward their retirement savings. Province contributions will be based on doctors' years of service, full or part-time status, and the amount they contribute to their preferred retirement savings option. The retirement benefit is available to all full and part-time doctors who are licensed to work in Nova Scotia and provide direct patient care or clinical services like specialists in radiology and pathology. The amounts the doctors can receive based on their years of service as of December 31st are as follows. 5 or fewer years of service, $5,000 annually. No savings contribution by the doctor is required. Up to 5 to 15 years, up to $10,000 annually. And then more than 15 years, $15,000 annually. So a physician retirement fund initiative announced by the province as part of their ongoing effort to recruit and retain doctors. Please welcome to the program, Dr. John Gillis. Dr. John, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks.
I don't know if you heard that, but the province is coming up with a bit of a doctor pension to keep doctors here.
Yeah, that would have been good 20 years ago, but I still think it's a positive move.
You think it'll keep doctors will help to get doctors and keep them here?
I think it's a piece of the puzzle. I mean, like anything, it's multifactorial. There's a lot of reasons why people make their decisions. Certainly, that's one of them. And I think people think that everybody in the medical profession makes good decisions with their money and with their life and their business, but that's not always the case. And I think it's nice for anybody in any profession to have access to a stable retirement plan. So I think generally it's a positive thing. Have to check out the details.
902-405-6000 is the number. 902-405-6000 is how you get on to the program. If you have a medical-related question, Dr. John got a couple of emails before the show started here. I'd like to get one out of the way while we get some people on the line. Hello, Dr. John. How do you wean yourself off, and I'm probably going to butcher this, gabapentin? I was on for 3 months, 300 grams morning and evening. Gabapentin, Gababentin.
Yeah, no, it's a drug I understand very well. It's a drug used for pain, anxiety, which is commonly used. The short answer is that those doses, most people really don't need to spend too much time weaning that, if at all. That's a small dose. The max dose per day is 3,600 milligrams. If people are concerned, I usually just tell them to go slow. So if you're on 300 milligrams twice a day, take away 100 milligrams every few days. If you have hundreds that you can do that with, but at a lower dose, it's usually not that big a deal.
902-405-6000, and one more email question, Dr. John, before we get to the phones. This question for Dr. John. In 2022, I moved back to Cape Breton due to issues with WCB. I kept the same GP in Halifax that I've had since the pre-injuries, this writer says. I was recently diagnosed with a heart murmur. My GP referred me for an echo. I'm assuming that's an echocardiogram. But Halifax bounces the referral to Cape Breton, and Cape Breton bounces the referral back to Halifax, kind of like a hot potato. He says, I have a great GP, and I'm very lucky. My medical conditions are complex, so a new GP is not an option. Any advice on how to prevent this from happening? I'm assuming this is the bounce back between the two jurisdictions. It occurs every referral that is put in. It's becoming very frustrating and worrisome. Have a great day.
Yeah, it's a tough problem. I mean, if I'm sending a referral to another jurisdiction, I tend to try and maybe call ahead to see if I can prevent that from happening. There is a fair bit of bounce back, and there's different wait times in different areas. So I think that's probably the best advice I can give is to try and communicate. Whoever's sending the referral to wherever it's going, and to try and stay ahead of the problem.
902-405-6000 is the number. Is it because they're two different jurisdictions and obviously two different systems, and they just don't mesh right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends if it's two districts in Nova Scotia or province to province, and there's different areas that systems don't seem to want to chat with each other. So, hopefully that problem can be resolved as we work through some of our tech issues.
Dr. John, I'm hearing anecdotally that pneumonia is making the rounds here in HRM. What is pneumonia? Is it contagious, and how do you treat it?
The true definition of pneumonia is a bacterial infection caused by different bacteria, which are living organisms that are different from viruses. It is not typically contagious. I mean, theoretically, if somebody has a bad infection, then you're exposed to the bacteria. It could put you at higher risk, but that's not typically how it spreads. People get exposed to the bacteria. It grows in their lungs, and it causes an infection. We have a lot of people out there getting diagnosed with pneumonia when they actually have a virus, whether it's COVID or, different viruses that cause colds. So it is important to distinguish between the two. Viruses don't need antibiotics. They will go away on their own with, supportive treatment. But we see a lot of unnecessary antibiotics. So it is important to, understand the difference between the two and, treat appropriately. Pneumonia with antibiotics and viruses, usually with supportive care.
Is there a telltale symptom for somebody that has full-blown pneumonia as opposed to a virus? Or is it something that has to be diagnosed at the at the doctor's office?
Yeah, the hallmarks can be the same. Cough, difficulty breathing, bringing stuff up, fever. Usually, a pneumonia is more, serious in that it's affecting a bigger part of the lung and can cause people to become, very unwell, have trouble breathing, and based on what you see in front of you, order an X-ray to determine if there's actual evidence thereof.
Is stiffness in the joints part of that sort of telltale sign, or is that something different?
Not particularly. So
that could mean it's something else.
Yeah, it's a very general symptom. Stiffness in the joints can go along with a lot of things. Arthritis,
right.
You get the flu. People often feel achy and stiff. That's viral. So it's hard to pull apart what's what sometimes, which is why you want to diagnose pneumonia, get an X-ray.
House Calls continues after the break. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes. Welcome back to House Calls. I'm Dan Alstrand. He's Dr. John Gillis. He's with us here, as he is every Wednesday, to answer your medical-related questions. And the lines are wide open right now. If you have a question you'd like to get answered, it's a good chance to get in. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Dr. John, a question about COVID rapid tests. We heard from Dr. Strang last week that they're not necessarily going to be available for the masses, for the public anymore. What's your advice to those that are concerned that they're not going to be able to know if they have COVID?
I think the base principle, is they will be available for some people. They may be available to be privately purchased, although you got to make sure you're getting something that's effective. The main reality is if you're sick, you should stay home. If you have the symptoms that fit COVID, or if you have the symptoms that, you're feeling unwell, you're coughing, you're hacking, you have a fever, you should stay home anyway. And this should be a general principle that we need to all get our heads around. So, would we like people to be able to test as much as possible? We would. And, it comes down to a supply and cost issue, but the general principle remains the same. If you're sick, stay home. If you have to go out, if you're not feeling well, wear a mask so you don't hawk all over everyone else.
It seems to be the standard response now when somebody says, I got a bit of a cold, but I tested, I don't have COVID, and then just they come to work or they go to do what they're going to do anyway, right?
Yeah. So, it's not great for your productivity, but it's not great if you get someone else sick just because it's not COVID, whether it's, influenza, RSV, or whatever else is kicking around.
902-405-6000 is the number. Let's welcome Glenn to the program. Glenn, how are you?
Good. Just got some questions. I got bit by a horsefly in June and ended up getting Lyme disease.
From a horsefly?
From a horsefly. They won't admit it, but I know it was from a horsefly. It's the only thing that bit me and the only thing I found on me. So I ended up in hospital for 10 days on antibiotics and 30 days at home on IV antibiotics. But my hands aren't coordinating right after 2 months, and I've got chest pain around my rib cage from back to front. It's very, very sore. I lost about 20 pounds through the ordeal. So I'm just wondering if this is going to be something I will come back from in time and the feeling my hands will come back, or is this permanent now?
Oh, that's a hard one to answer. Did you actually test positive for Lyme disease?
I did, after 10 days of waiting for the results.
Okay, and you were treated with what?
IV antibiotics.
Okay, where was this done? Locally in Nova Scotia, presumably?
In Truro.
In Truro. Yeah, so the short answer is, most people respond well to treatment. Sometimes it takes longer than others. Your symptoms are very nonspecific. They certainly could be associated with Lyme. They could be associated with other things. So I think it's always important not to assume it's that, to make sure it's not something else that is causing the problem. So it's probably worthwhile getting another look and making sure there's not something else. But to your question, usually even with Lyme, things clear up pretty quickly. Especially if you were, sounds like you were treated. I mean, 10 days, it's not nothing, but some people linger with this for months and months after they're bitten by something. So I think it's a good thing that you got treated relatively quickly. So hopefully it improves quickly.
Thanks, Glenn. I appreciate the call. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. We welcome Dave to the program. Dave, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. Beautiful day out there. Can't complain.
Question for Dr. Gillis, please.
The question is, underneath my left rib, I have a pulsation. It's been going off and on for about a year now, but I don't feel sick or anything, but I just wonder, it's not pain, but the pulsation underneath my left rib. I don't know what it could be. I'm a type 2 diabetic, and I was wondering what it could be.
You're going to have to say that about 75% slower, because I missed it.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. I'm a type 2 diabetic, and underneath my left rib cage, I have a pulsation feeling. And it's been doing off and on for about a year now, but it isn't really pain, but it's a pulsation, and I can actually feel it in my hand like a heartbeat. And it only occasionally when I'm under stress, it seems to act up, but I don't know what it possibly could be.
Well, is it possible that it is your heartbeat that you're feeling? That's where your heart is, on the left side of your chest.
Okay,
and
yeah.
Sometimes we feel strong beats. I mean, I get extra heartbeats sometimes, what we call PVCs, that like a little extra strong, and I feel them. The other thing that's over there under your, in the lower end of your rib cage is your stomach. Sometimes it's, spasm of your stomach if your stomach's irritated by something. But you may just be aware of your heart beating a little extra strong. It may be your stomach. Have you had this checked?
No, I haven't had it checked. I'm going to mention to my doctor. I guess see him next week. But it's especially when I eat spicy food. Like I love Mexican food, but when I eat anything spicy with peppers in it, it seems to act up. It seems to aggravate it.
Yeah. Well, that would suggest to me that it's probably your stomach that's a little bit irritated, and you're going to have to stay away from Jose Cuervo and all the good Mexican food. Or you may need something to settle your stomach, some acid reduction or something like that. So I would check in with your doc.
Thanks for the call, Dave. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. The next caller is Lee. Lee, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks very much for taking my call. Dr. Gillis, I just have a quick question for you. I had, and I know this isn't your specialty, so I apologize for springing it on you. I had gastric bypass surgery back on October 1st. The surgery was a complete success according to the surgeon. So far, thank God, I've been able to lose 83 pounds, which is a big accomplishment for me. I'm very happy with that. The problem that I'm having is that even though I'm 2.5 months now after surgery, and I followed the liquid diet for the first 6 weeks, and I'm supposed to be introducing solid foods now, I really can't eat anything. I have and when I say anything, I mean literally I have 2 bites of food and my stomach feels completely full, like I can't digest anymore. And if I try to force myself to eat more, I'll actually vomit. Now, my question for you is, I've mentioned this to the doctor, and he keeps telling me that it's normal, you're fine, you're normal. But everything I read says that I should be able to eat about a cup of food per meal, and I can't eat anywhere near that. I'm only getting in about 600 to 700 calories a day. I did do some research online and found out a condition. I may be pronouncing it wrong, called gastroparesis, where the lower part of your stomach becomes paralyzed and your food doesn't move properly, which can be a complication after abdominal surgery. And I'm wondering if there's any tests that I can get on my own to maybe check for this condition, and if that's a reasonable self-diagnosis. I know Google's not the greatest diagnostician, but that's the only thing I could think of that might be causing these problems, and nobody seems to be taking what I'm saying seriously. It's a little bit frustrating. I'm wondering if you can give me your input.
Yeah, I mean, you're into a really subspecialized area here. I mean, these are not things that most of us deal with on a day-to-day basis, and generally I would defer to the person who did your procedure. I mean, gastroparesis, is a real thing. It most commonly happens with diabetics when, the stomach stops, kind of squeezing and pushing food out as it normally does. It can happen as a complication of surgery, but, there's no routine tests that I'm aware of that, just anybody could order. That, again, with, you having had the procedure, your anatomy has changed, and, that would have to be reflected in any test ordered. So I guess I would probably encourage you to be patient and, check back with the doc again, if you don't feel like you're getting what you need. But it does sound like you made some positive progress, and that's a good thing. I mean, you're losing weight and you're feeling better. Hopefully these are the positives, and hopefully that appetite comes with time, as everybody's different after these procedures.
Thanks for the call, Lee.
Well.
Thanks for the call, Lee. I appreciate it. The telephone number is 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. If you have a medical-related question, the doctor's here for the next 30 minutes to answer them. You're listening to The Todd Veinotte Show. This is House Calls, and we're back in minutes. Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. Hope you're having a fantastic Wednesday morning. It's House Calls. The lines are open. 902-405-6000. Lots of slots available. If you have a medical-related question, give us a call. Again, the number, 902-405-6000. And Dr. John is here to answer those questions. Dr. John, let's go right to the phone lines, and we welcome Bill to the program. Bill, how are you?
Pretty good. I had another question, but I'll start off with I'm a diabetic, type 2, and feet are getting numbish, eyes are getting bad, all these wonderful things, and going in for some checkups. But I've got a scab, I guess they call it, on my leg that is just not healing or going away. And wondering if there's any way to speed up the process to get it to heal and get the scab gone.
Dr. John?
Where's the scab again, sir?
It's the middle of my leg there, between my foot and my knee, right in the middle.
Yeah, it's a common spot where leg ulcers develop, and they often do so because of decreased circulation and that sort of thing. So I guess the first thing is to make sure that if there's any infection, that it's well cared for, that it's been treated. Dressings help wounds heal by keeping other bacteria and stuff away from them. So we often believe in putting a dressing, sometimes with some cream, to keep it covered on the wound. Do you have any wound care now?
Not really. No, I'm on my own. Yeah, no. I mean,
so
it's
you probably
not.
have to talk to your doctor about getting set up with some VON home care to have that done if you need it. There's not a whole lot of private options for that, but there is a process to send in a referral form and to get that process underway.
Bill, you had a second question?
It's medical related. Now, I've had this experience of going to the emergency. And actually, it was not my normal thing, because my doctor had to go up there to say to give me an injection for cancer. I get needle every 3 months. Well, I'll tell you, I don't know what your thoughts are, but I had the experience of watching tearing down the big park place there in the front, where you could park pretty easy, go into emergency within 50 feet. You're in front of a woman or a man.
You're talking about the parkade, Bill?
Yeah, and then they put this new park thing down below. This is murderous to try to get parked in there. That's not too bad. But from there on, that long pedway there over to the hospital, and then trying to get another long, drawn-out thing to try to get to the emergency and so on. I can't understand how they can just play with taxpayers' money, rip down the great big. I don't know. What's your thoughts on it? Is this supposed to be a good thing now for us, or what?
I think Bill's talking about the redevelopment at the QE2, Dr. John.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, the short answer is yes. It's a lot of work, and it's a challenge to get it all done, and it takes time, but we don't have enough space. I mean, we're still using a hospital, the BG, that is, out of date and in many ways obsolete and should have been closed years ago, but we've done the best we can with it, and staff have worked hard and the men have worked hard to keep it going, but we need more space and infrastructure. Now, building massive hospitals in general is not the solution. More things in the community and as outpatients are a good thing, and we're seeing that happen to some degree. But I in general support the redevelopment.
It's going to kind of consolidate things when it's done, right? That's the theory? Is that they're going to move a lot of the things that are in different buildings and different locations into one big mammoth kind of complex?
Yeah, I mean that's good in a way, again, but putting too much in one place can defeat the purpose again, can really clog the place up, and you want to find ways to be as efficient and as creative as you can. So you don't want to just fill the place up overnight. It can it can fill up pretty quickly.
902, thanks, Bill. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000 is the number. We welcome James to the program. James, how are you?
Fine, thank you. Thanks for taking my call.
Your question, please.
The topic is COVID. I would be very interested to hear Dr. John's advice on the relative importance of getting this year's version of the vaccine to guard against COVID.
Yeah, no, my opinion has not changed at all since sort of minute one. I mean, the vaccines aren't perfect, but they provide a lot of protection against people getting seriously ill, having to be admitted to the hospital, needing to be on vents, and having their lives put at risk. And anything we can do to take vaccines for the strains that are out there right now, we should do. And I wholeheartedly encourage people to do so.
Dr. John, an email question in relation to that. It says, hello, I'm a 68-year-old man and want to know about keeping current on all vaccines. When can I get the latest COVID and flu vaccine? Should I also get RSV or RexV again? ? I've got pneumonia from my family doc last year and both shingle doses 2 years ago. What, if anything, else should I be getting?
No, it sounds pretty up to date. I mean, with COVID and flu, just follow the news as to when they're out there and make an appointment to get that done. RSV is not covered right now. It depends a little bit on age as to whether it's recommended. But generally, I think it's a good idea for anybody over 65, particularly if they have other health problems. And just doing a general review to make sure your pneumonia vaccine is up to date. There are several versions of that over the years. Some need people to have 2 shots. The newer one is more broadly effective. If you've had shingles, that's a good thing. But it's always a good idea just to go review everything you've had just to make sure.
How about kids, Dr. John? Is that still a thing? Do we still do a round of vaccinations for kids, school-age kids?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the standard is they do a lot of it in grade 7, but there's a process to follow kids right through, from birth, through their years as toddlers to make sure that they keep up. I mean, I think we saw, through COVID, some people fall off. It was harder to get in. You couldn't just get into the doctor, and some people fell behind. I saw a little bit of that myself, trying to catch some kids up. But it's important to do so. Most of the stuff is fairly routine, but can be serious if not dealt with.
Thanks for the call, James. Thanks for the emails, Dr. John. We're going to take another break. You're listening to House Calls on the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back in minutes.
Axe.
Welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. This is House Calls. Just a few minutes left. There are a number of open lines if you want to get a quick hitter in and get your question answered before the end of the show. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Just like Phil did. Philip, how are you?
Not too bad, thank you.
Your question for Dr. Gillis, please.
Thank you. Doctor, I
Philip, we lost you. Did your phone die?
I'd have had pericarditis, problem with my heart. So anyway, to make a long story short, I got an echocardiogram done, and the result was nothing was wrong with my heart. So, but while I was waiting for the echocardiogram, they prescribed me aspirin, I guess as a blood thinner, and also nitro spray. Now, I forgot to ask my family doctor when I was talking to him after he gave me the results of the echogram. There's no advantage to me continuing with the aspirin, is there? I got off of it there a few days ago, and I'm just wondering, is there any need for me to continue with that or the nitro?
Well, it depends what the diagnosis was, and it depends, what you were told. It may be very necessary, it may not be. What instructions were you given?
Well, I wasn't really given any, other than my family doctor just told me that the results of the echocardiogram were good, so they didn't find anything.
Well, I would clarify that. I mean, there are some reasons why people stay on aspirin for screening, but increasingly, or for prevention, but increasingly we've moved away from that. An echocardiogram, shows certain things, but, it's not definitive for everything. So I would just ask your family doctor a specific question if it's okay to come off those meds in the context of the information that they have. The answer is probably yes, based on what you're telling me, but I don't have your echo and I don't have all your info. So
thanks for the call, Philip. I appreciate it. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. An email question, Dr. John. It says, I'm having hot flashes and then a lot of them. Do these go away on their own, or do I need to talk to my doctor about a hormone therapy?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty general question. It depends on age. It depends on other health factors. Generally, if women are menopausal and they get hot flashes over time, they will fade as that progresses or evolves. But, to help people feel well and, feel their best, often hormone replacement is necessary. And, there's been a lot of changes in how that's done. And it definitely is worth checking in with your doctor or other healthcare provider.
Is there any conditions that some may have that would make their hot flashes worse or more persistent?
Maybe some endocrine conditions, some issues with, sweating and hormonal control, but not typically. I mean, most of what we see is menopause related or related to other meds that people are on that can magnify the symptoms.
902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. One more email question, Dr. John, then I think we're going to let you go. This email says, hi, heard you guys talking about dementia over the last few weeks. Dementia runs in my family. Is there anything I can do as a preventative measure to perhaps avoid getting it?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, there's data that shows if you keep yourself healthy and active and fit, that it does help. There's data of the people that keep their minds active. There's also data in some cases that those things may not help depending on the type of dementia. But generally that's the principle for me is to stay fit, stay active, eat well, and to keep your mind busy. There are medications that can help when it actually starts, but I don't think that's what we're talking about here. It's how to stay healthy, and it's generally the same formula, which we all don't like sometimes, but that's what it is.
I've heard of people talking about doing, things that activate their mind, like doing crossword puzzles or Sudoku or something along those lines to keep those synapses firing. Is that effective? Does that work?
Yeah, I mean, there is data that shows that is effective, that people who continue to be active, that people continue to do some form of work or engage their minds, do better. But again, a lot of this is highly genetic and based on other health conditions. So it really is doing your best to optimize, given your genetics and everything happening around you.
Dr. John, we're going to give you back 10 minutes of your time. We appreciate it, and go Leafs go.
Go Leafs go.
That is Dr. John Gillis here every Wednesday for House Calls to answer your medical-related questions. We've got a few minutes here to sort of tee things up. I mentioned the open hour is going to happen after the news at noon, and it is. I'm looking forward to having a conversation about you, but I also have a question that I'd like you to ask. This story on our website, halifax.citynews.ca, the Nova Scotia government says it will provide financial support for at least 2 more years to the private ferry service that links our province with Maine. Public Works Minister Kim Masland released a report yesterday that shows all regions of the province benefit from this service operated by Bay Ferries Limited. The report says the heavily subsidized ferry that travels between Yarmouth, Nova Scotia and Bar Harbor, Maine is not more expensive than comparable services. As well, the report says that after the 2026 sailing season, the province will require new agreements for the vessel, the operator, and the terminal operator in Maine. Now, the provincial government budgeted $21 million for this service in 2024, but the final costs have yet to be calculated. Meantime, the government also confirming that a full economic impact study that began in September of 2023 will not be finished until next spring. In a statement, Minister Masland said, "Our job with the ferry service is making sure it delivers good value for all Nova Scotians, and we continue to do the work to understand this impact." She went on to say, "This progress report shows us ferry passengers stay longer, spend more, and travel throughout the province. It also illustrates the importance of maintaining consistency with the service." The progress report said during the 2023 sailing season, visitors used the ferry, spent more than $20 million in Nova Scotia, and stayed in the province for an average of 8.2 nights. The study also found that 38% of passengers visited Halifax, 30% stayed in the Annapolis Valley, and 27% made it all the way up into Cape Breton. In 2023, the ferry carried 38,430 passengers, 15,000 change vehicles. As of last Thursday, the ferry had carried 48,804 passengers, so just about 10,000 passengers more, and 19,711 vehicles this season. That's an increase of just over 4,000. 30% growth over last year is testament of the hard work of our BFL employees and local contractors, said the CEO of Bay Ferries, Mark Wilson, in a statement. So let me ask you this question. We budgeted $21 million to subsidize the run between Yarmouth and Bar Harbor and vice versa. And the numbers from 2023 said that visitors spent more than $20 million in 2023. That number's probably going to increase this year because there's more people on the more backsides and seats on the ferry coming this way than last year. $21 million we spend on that. So the government has now committed to 2 more sailing seasons of the ferry at least $21 million, I'm going to suggest. So that's $42 million more over the next couple of years. And then I think the rubber's going to hit the road. It's already a lot of money, don't get me wrong. But then I think the rubber's going to hit the road because, as the story said, after the 2026 sailing season, the province will have to then enter new agreements with the vessel, which is the CAT, the operator, which is Bay Ferries, and the terminal operator in Maine. Now, if you remember, we spent a whole lot of money as a province on that terminal in Maine, in Bar Harbor. Is this good money? Is this good money well spent? I know this topic has been up for discussion for a long time, and I was disappointed to hear that the feasibility or the economic impact study was going to be delayed by another 6 months, so we'll already be into the next sailing season by the time that economic impact study is done. I will say, for the record, that we did reach out to the minister, Kim Masland, to join the program. She is unable to join us either today or tomorrow to come on and answer some of our questions. So there's that. Is this good money? Is this good money well spent on the ferry? And do you believe it? I'm always, and I'm not trying to be a nabob of negativity, but when we hear economic impact studies, it's tough to quantify those numbers, right? It's when we hear of events and we hear of this thing comes to this community and generates this amount of millions of dollars in economic benefit. Does it really? And if 30% of the people that, even more, let's say to the Valley into Halifax, come out of the Yarmouth area, 60%, that means 40% are driving right through, right? So 4 out of every 10 cars, well, it's probably not fair considering 27% are going up to Cape Breton. But a good portion of the cars are driving right through, and they're already through and into New Brunswick. So is this good money? That's my question to you. We're going to stop down and take a break for the news at noon. On the other side of it, that question and many more. It's time to throw open the telephone lines. The number is 902-405-6000. There's a lot of open lines now. If you want to get in, join early to avoid disappointment. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. The open hour continues on the other side of the news. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. We're back in minutes. All right, welcome back to the Todd Veinotte Show. Dan along with you here. It is just after the noon news on a Wednesday, and that means it's time for the open hour. This hour dedicated to you. The telephone number, 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Your chance to talk about whatever it is that's on your mind. I put a couple of teasers out there just to pique your interest on a couple of the subjects of the day. One of them, of course, was the much talked about Yarmouth to Bar Harbor, Maine ferry. We heard yesterday that the province has committed to another 2 years of subsidizing that service. We don't know the exact bill yet because they're still counting the numbers, but it was budgeted at about $21 million. A report from 2023 suggesting that it generated $20 million worth of revenue in the province of Nova Scotia. Is it money well spent? Is this where we should be spending $21 million every year on a ferry that runs from Maine to Bar Harbor, Maine to Yarmouth? I'll get the cities right. I promise I will. That's one of the questions out there. Also, I just was cruising around on the HRM website, and I came across some new numbers. Voting today, advanced voting, it's the last day. So if you haven't done it already, what are you waiting for? Anyway, it's the last day today. And as of 9 o'clock this morning, on the 16th of October, 20% of the eligible voting population of HRM have cast a ballot. I don't know if that's good or bad, but 20% have cast a ballot. We know, and more stories have been written about it. We talked about it yesterday, and more stories written about it yesterday and today about apathy out there in the electorate. And we know that we're going to see low voter turnout. We are. And as much as we've talked about it here on the program, I still think we're probably going to see numbers in maybe, if we're lucky, the low 40s. And I still to this day don't understand that. But I'll leave that question to you. 902-405-6000. Let's head to the phones, and we welcome Ann to the program. Ann, how are you?
Hi, good morning, or good afternoon now. Yeah, I was thinking that they shouldn't be official. They should be in power for only 8 years. You know what I mean? And
so
they shouldn't be
term limit
politicians.
is what you're saying, right? We should have an 8-year term limit, right?
Yes, because they get too powerful, they get too entrenched in this. And I think that was a nice chess move that Trudeau and Andy Fillmore played, that Andy gets to take the mayor's position while Mike Savage gets to be a lieutenant governor. That was, how stupid does he think we Nova Scotians or Helgonians are? I mean, I certainly am going to vote for Fillmore. Absolutely not. That was really a dirty trick to play on us.
Do you think, and Anna, and I'm not going to disagree with you, Ann, but do you think that Andy Fillmore has that much sway with the Prime Minister?
Oh, yes. And besides, he has to cover up. He has to keep his mouth shut about what all the stuff the Prime Minister got himself involved in, and all the Liberal people are just covering up what, you know.
Well, he
things that, you know.
As much as I don't want to defend him, he has to keep his mouth shut because there's a confidentiality agreement with Cabinet. Right?
No, I'd never keep my mouth shut.
Me either. I'm not good at it.
No, absolutely not. I couldn't do it in good conscience because if I was in there, I'd have to protect the people. It is the politician's job to protect the people. But there is one decent person on there, and that's Jim Hoskins. And I know from past that man has been really good with people, and he's very honest, and he's never been in. He's not a career politician, so that's why I like him. And I've had dealings with Pam Lovelace. She just smiles and nods her head, and then she doesn't do anything. And Wade Mason, the same thing, smiles and nods his head and doesn't do anything. So those two are out. And the rest of them, I don't know. The rest of them, I have no opinion because I have no dealings with them. I don't know. But Jim Hoskins has a good reputation from being in the Halifax Police Force and was well respected, by a very respectable policeman that was there that everybody loved. So, but he passed away, darn it. And so this is my idea to keep people from getting too much power 8 years and out.
So a term limit, 2 years you're done, or 2 terms you're done.
Yes, and you know what? It should, and they shouldn't be getting. They should have pensions from their own jobs that they did.
Well, they don't get a special pension, and they get the pension that every employee at HRM is entitled to, and I think that's fair.
Yeah, but do they get the same pension as somebody who's worked 30 years if they've only worked 8 years?
Well, it's based on your time in. As far as I know, it's based on how long you serve and how long you work for the city. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that they get the same pension that a guy that's working with the sanitation department or a guy that's working for cutting the grass in the parks.
Yeah. Oh, and thank God we've got the sanitation department because without it, the city would be a mess.
And have a great day. I appreciate it, okay?
Okay, thanks.
Have a good one. A great call, 902-405-6000. It's not a bad idea, right? And I know that that longtime counselors on that are up for re-election will disagree with me, but there have been a number of counselors and a number of counselors that are on the current council that have committed to 2 terms and out. Lisa Blackburn, 2 terms and out. I think Lindell Smith said the same thing, 2 terms and out. And we've seen some very popular counselors say the same thing that could have been reelected again and said, no, I've 2 terms. I've committed to that. And this city needs new blood and I'm moving on. Well, maybe we make that official. Can we even do that? I don't know. 902-405-6000, 902-405-6000. Let's welcome Dave to the program. Dave, how are you?
Good afternoon, Dan. Couple of things, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Get out and vote, folks.
100%.
I mean, don't sit on your derrieres and complain and biatch about this and that. For example, the bike lanes, I think it was a 14-2 vote by council that they wanted them in. That's just one example. I might be wrong on that. So if you don't want bike lanes, and you're not voting, well, you don't have a say. You can sit and call in and rant, but get off your derriere, do a little bit of homework. You can even vote online. Right?
I did.
Or on the phone.
Yep.
And do a little research, right? Get out of your, whatever your little world is, and because this is very important. And by the way, the mayor is not resolved yet, contrary to your previous caller. Andy Fillmore is not the mayor as yet. He could be. He's got my vote. He seems to be very knowledgeable about urban planning and what have you. Was he a liberal? Well, I don't care for the liberals. Trudeau won't get my vote, but it doesn't matter. I'm bipartisan. If somebody has some good and sounds very good to me, and as far as their plans and ideas, they'll get my vote, and I will vote. And I highly recommend folks that are listening right now, do a little homework, get off your derrieres and vote, because otherwise you really don't have a say, in my opinion, right? It doesn't take a lot to do that. And your council as well. Do a little homework, whatever your district is, right? I'm District 16, for example. Do a little homework because they're going to affect your way of life, and things that you may not want or want. So there you go. Now, can I just talk about the immigration, if you don't mind?
Very quickly, Dave.
International students, right? 3,000 of them we don't have now. And I think even Tim Houston said that the feds are sending over 6,000 asylum seekers to Nova Scotia. They want. The cabinet of Trudeau wants them here.
Yeah.
And other provinces. Tim said, no way, Jose. we don't have the room, we don't have the infrastructure. So we get rid of the 3,000 students that pay money into the system, educated, smart students, and yet the feds are sending over six, and God bless the asylum seekers, they're just looking for a better world, that probably don't speak English perhaps, don't have a lot to contribute, trade, skills, whatever, and we're going to try to house them. So how does that make any sense, Dan, in my opinion?
Well, I'll tell you what, the universities are certainly going to hurt because of that, and we're going to bring the universities on tomorrow to talk about the impact that this cap is having on them and on the community.
Yeah, on the community. These students spend money in our communities and what have you, and they're educated, and and it's hurting the universities, hurting other things as well, not just the universities. I know a lot of, and the universities, by the way, are industry to this city. Dan, those universities provide an engine. That's why I moved here in some ways, because I looked at the infrastructure. What does Nova Scotia have to offer me in the way of Halifax when I moved here in 2000 from Vancouver when nothing was going on? They got the universities. That's like, you don't want to go somewhere where there's a mill and they're going to shut it down. You got the harbor. So the universities are very important to our economy here. And shame on Trudeau to cut that back. And now we have the asylum seekers we're going to have to deal with. Like I said, my heart goes out to the asylum seekers. There's no more room here. It's hard on everything, healthcare, whatever. So that's just my opinion. Get out and vote, folks, because it's very, very important. Otherwise, in my opinion, you don't have a say to rant about bike lanes or the homeless. So it's very important times. Thank you, Dan, for taking my call.
All right, Dave, have a good one. 902-405-6000. Tony, you're on the line. You're the first up after the break. You're listening to the Open Hour on the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Olstrand. We're back in a minute. Welcome back. Dan Olstrand here along with you. It's Wednesday afternoon. It's the Open Hour. The telephone number is 902-405-6000. And there are a ton of open lines. If you want to get in, get on quick and get it off your chest. Here is your opportunity. Doesn't happen very often these days. 902-405-6000. Your chance to get onto the air as quick as you can, just like Tony's going to do. Tony, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you, Dan. I hope you're as well.
I am.
Great. That's wonderful. Your last caller, I only agree with one thing he said. He said, get out and vote.
Yep.
Get out and vote. I said that, and I continue to say that no matter what. But his information is a little shaky. One of the most highly subsidized items on the budget provincially are the 11 universities that are in Nova Scotia. They are highly subsidized. In fact, I believe to the tune, I could not get this year's figure, but over the years it's been as much as $540 million for the year spent between those 11 universities, colleges and universities. So those 3,000 students are not paying that $540 million. We know that comes out of the same pocket as all the other taxes come out of in Nova Scotia. Now, I'm not going to go any further with that. He can check it. You can check it. I did not fact check it for this year, but I do know that Darrell Dexter, the first thing he did when he became Premier of Nova Scotia was give the universities, it was a while back, 2012, admittedly, $540 million and they were continue to be subsidized. The other issue that I want to talk about the ferry, but there's a couple other things that I'd rather talk about.
Sure.
Now, I got two items in my Meta site over the weekend. One was supposedly written by and he was endorsing Andy Fillmore for mayor.
Who was it? I missed that. Tony, who was it endorsing him?
Peter Stafford, former...
Yeah, know who he is. Yeah, you cut out there for a sec, that's all.
And yesterday I got another one. And these are quite extensive. This one was from Jeff Reagan, who was an ex-Speaker of the House.
Yep.
Now, Stafford is NDP.
Yep.
Reagan is Liberal.
He was.
You can't tell me that there's no political affiliation going on here. You can't tell me that. Why would these two people, especially Stauffer, my heart's broken that Stauffer did that, because my wife loved him. She was going to vote for him, and unfortunately he got jammed up in a political brouhaha and social brouhaha. But I had a lot of respect for him, too. So that's one issue. The other issue is that, we'll talk about the ferry. The ferry has been subsidized every year, with the exception of two, which were in the mid-1990s. And if you go back and look at it, the money that was spent on ferry service between both Yarmouth and Maine and now Bar Harbor is well up into the $200 million range. Well up in the $200 million range over the years. You see all kinds of hokey stuff. The year it didn't sail, 1 year it didn't sail because of the pandemic, and it got $97,000 a month. The proprietor of it, $97,000 a month. The Canadians spent $1.5 million to fix the Portland terminal, knowing that there was no ship going into the Portland terminal the following year. So it went to Bar Harbor, where they spent, and this is all, you can check it, it's all fact-checked, $8.5 million plus. That's what we know about. And it was delayed so the ferry couldn't run for a year. This ferry is nothing but another burden on the taxpayer in Nova Scotia. It makes no profit. People tell me, well, it's a public transportation issue. No, it's not. It's not public transportation by any stretch of the imagination. It supports tourism, sure, maybe, but it's not in my pocket. It doesn't. It's I don't know what it does. It certainly. I don't know if you've ever been to Bar Harbor, but $8.5 million is the entire budget for the city, and we spend it to build.
Not a lot there. You're right.
Freaking terminal, and there's not much there. At least Portland, you get off, you can go have a meal, you can stay in a hotel that is fairly comfortable, but I'm just wound up today. I'm just terribly wound up.
It's all good, Tony.
All right, one last thing.
Sure, quickly.
Who do you know that gets a pay raise the day they take a new job?
Well, I did.
Well, okay. Do you know anybody else?
I think if you're lucky and you apply and get a new job, most people do, don't they?
And then you get to vote on what your new salary is going to be, right?
Well, no, never get to
what
vote on that.
What I'm alluding to,
yeah,
the new councilors and the new mayor will get a pay raise, or at least know what their pay raise is on 1 November. That's not too far after they've been elected. And the reason being is because the budget for next year has got to be developed. Now, will we know how much it is? Well, we're going to know that the councilors are going to go into the sunshine number, because their number right now is around $98,000. And the mayor, well, he's going to go well over $200,000. So, but can you imagine getting a pay raise and knowing you're going to get a pay raise, and then you get to vote on it? You get to decide how much you're going to get. How do you like that?
Yeah, well, I'd love to vote on a pay raise for me. Tony, I appreciate your time.
Have a great day.
You too. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Dawn and Brad are on the line. You'll be the first two out of the gate when we come back from the news. There are a few lines that are open. 902-405-6000 is the number if you want to get in. This is your opportunity to join the open hour, talk about whatever it is that's on your mind. The election, voting. Are you surprised that with how easy it is to vote now, and that ends today, but how easy it is to vote by logging onto a website or calling a number, that only 20% of eligible voters have already cast their ballots? I'll leave that with you when we take the break. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Alstrand. We're back after the news.
Bye.
Welcome back. This is the Todd Veinotte Show. Happy Wednesday afternoon. The open hour continues. There are a few lines open if you'd like to get into the action. 902-405-6000 is the number. Let's go right to the phones and welcome Don to the show. Don, how are you?
Pretty good, sir. Love your show, Dan, I think you're doing a great job.
Thanks.
I got a couple things just wanted to briefly hit on. The Nova Scotia New Brunswick Isthmus project. I think the Fed's putting out 50 and the two provinces putting out 25 would be reasonable. I think it's critical to our entire country, not just our provinces. And I'm not a big liberal Trudeau fan by any means, but I think what he's offering is reasonable.
Despite the fact that other projects have received more federal funding, like I'm thinking of those bridges in Quebec that everybody talks about.
I'm not too familiar. I was trying to surf here to see if I could figure out who paid the total cost of the Confederation Bridge in 1997, but I'm trying to find it and I don't see it.
I think there was a partnership on that one too. But the complaint I get about the Isthmus is that they repaired a bridge in Montreal, and not sure which one. It might be the Champlain Bridge, but I'm not entirely sure the name. Anyway. And the contention is there that it was deemed to be a federal piece of infrastructure, and the federal government picked up the tab on it. So that's the argument that the premier's making, is that Isthmus is a pretty strategic piece of infrastructure, right? If it's gone, no sea traffic from this side of the country can move to the west.
Yeah, fair point. Bike lanes, just the usage is minuscule, and I can't imagine them spending more money on bike lanes. And I think I heard you say earlier, the last vote on it was 14-2 in favor of bike lanes. Is that correct?
On the new, the council at their last meeting had there's a proposal that's before council. They didn't pass it, but they moved it forward. Is going to create a whole bunch of new bike lanes in the south end at a cost of about $15 million.
So to my next point, mayoral race, if you don't like what you see, don't re-elect any of the candidates, and do your research before you vote, because it's very important to know who you're voting for. And I've heard that before on the Todd show about not re-electing anybody. He didn't say that personally, but I just know a lot of people are saying things like that.
For sure.
So just get out and vote. That's the main thing.
Awesome, Don. I appreciate it. Great call.
Yeah. Okay, take care.
902-405-6000. I got an email on those bike lanes just quickly before we take our next call about the 17%. Pam Lovelace in here earlier today talking about these bike lanes and this $15 million price tag should council, the new council, continue to approve this project, and that the HRM would not be on the hook only, I put an only around this, for 17% of that. And from the way that I understand it, the way that she explained it was, that would be the council portion. There'd be a provincial portion, but the federal government would also have a portion of that $15 million. And it's one of these take it or leave it things, right? The feds say, hey, look, we've got infrastructure money. You need to build these. So if you build these, we'll give you this amount of money. And that is the way that Pam explained it. And I stand to be corrected, but that's the way that I understand it, is that the money from the feds that would make up the bulk of that $8 or $15 million. Don't forget, the city's still going to pay 17% of that. Has to be spent on that kind of infrastructure. You can't, like she said, you can't spend it on in putting an egress in Tantallon where we know there's a problem. It has to be spent on specific things. I asked her, could we just say no? And she said that she pushed for that at council. So, just because there's a fistful of money, do we have to say, oh, thank you, sir, and we're going to spend it on what you tell us to do? Or can you just say, hey, look, don't want your money because I don't want to spend the 17% of 15, whatever that is, $15 million on a bike lane that I'm going to suggest a majority of Nova Scotians, or not Nova Scotians, Haligonians don't want or will use. Ryan, how are you?
How are you doing today, Dan?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
Well, first of all, you took half the words out of my mouth, and that's exactly one of the points I was going to say. Because they're offering you the money, you don't have to take the money.
Right.
That being said, you had two politicians on first thing this morning in the first hour.
Yeah.
And both of them kept repeating similar things, two different things. One was, this is the 21st century. We need to get with the times and move the place forward. And the other is, look what everybody else does. Well, here's some news for them. Just because it works elsewhere doesn't mean it works here. Let's talk about the bike lanes. Yeah, bike lanes work everywhere else. And as she pointed out, there's lots of other communities that have taken the money and they're building bike lanes. And so that's what we have to do too. Well, look what they're doing in Ontario now. No more bike lanes without permission from the provincial government because they do not work in that province. And they have way more people than we have here. If they don't work in the Toronto metropolitan area, what makes people think it's going to work in Halifax? We have 500,000 people. We're a tiny population. And that goes for almost everything else that they point out for other cities. Look at other cities. Well, we're not other cities. We're 500,000 people. And that's for the entire municipality, not just even the city of Halifax. So it's a bit ridiculous. And the train lines, Pam Lovelace pointed out how we need to invest in the trains. Well, again, look how much money they're spending in Ontario on the light rail. And look at how many millions of people that's meant to service. Are we really expected to spend the same amount of money to service 500,000 people? That makes no sense to me. I don't know what you think about that.
Well, I think that, the numbers that I'm hearing for light rail could be as high as $35 billion. And I asked her the question. I said, how do you explain that? How do you sell that to the taxpayer? Because you and I are going to pay for it, right? Regardless if we get money from the feds and from the province, because
it's our money too.
It's our money too. I get it.
Yep. And they don't seem it's this constant moving towards the future thing, but without the realism of the fact that we are a small city. There's 1 million people, just over 1 million people in the entire province. So spending $35 billion on that really doesn't make sense. Now, I don't know how much time you have. I have a bit of an idea if you're willing to hear.
Quickly, I've got a few callers I want to get to, Ryan, so quickly if you can.
You want to save some money on this train? You really want to make that happen? Rather than most of that $35 billion would be upgrades to put in a new line, as you pointed out to me last week. Instead of upgrading all the lines, what would be actually much cheaper is to spend what would be somewhere probably between $6 and $8 billion. Still a lot of money, but you spend that on building a new container terminal in Woodside, where the old refinery was. By doing that, you free up all the space in the South End Container Terminal by Point Pleasant Park. That's a lot of new land you can use to build housing and office towers. You free up all the rail line now to be used for the train, so you don't have to spend what would be $15 billion upgrading it. And now you get rid of all the container traffic moving through the peninsula on trucks. It's 3 birds in one stone, and you end up saving yourself what would be probably $8 to $10 billion. So if you're really hell-bent on making that happen, maybe look into that as a solution.
Ryan, I appreciate the call, man. Have a good one. Just want to move on. Thanks. Cheers. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. Brad's been on the line for some time. Brad, I appreciate you holding. What's on your mind?
Hey, Dan. How you doing?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
I just want to chat about international students from a perspective. Like, I finished university, 5-8 years ago.
Okay.
Not going to name any names, but I went to a school that's notorious for large numbers of international students.
Fair.
In the Cape Breton area.
Oh, gee, I wonder what school he's taught. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, in my experience at school, I hung out with a lot of the international students, and I had kind of got their sort of wherewithal of why they were here in the first place. And a lot of them, it wasn't their first choice. It was their parents' first choice to bring them here. A lot of them, from China or from the Middle East, come from very affluent families. And it was almost like they brought the students over as a proxy to be able to speculate on the real estate market. So a lot of the students that I went to school with, their parents would, funnel money through them to buy condos, to buy houses at tax sales, things like in fact, my parents' house, actually, they bought from an international student. And none of them really had any intention of staying in Nova Scotia or Canada as a whole. Most of them, when they got their degree, were planning to go to the States, where a degree from their home country wouldn't be as widely kind of accepted as some of the ones that we have here in Canada.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, at face value, I can understand the caller that you had earlier, previously from BC, that was worried about, we're losing talent. People are coming here to learn and things like that. But the reality is they're not here to stay. they're here as a proxy a lot of times to spend money on our real estate market, and maybe sell a condo on 3 years down the line and make some money, or hang on to it and Airbnb or do whatever. But I would say a lot of the international students we have here, I wouldn't take it at face value or why they're here or why their parents requested them to come here. And that's all I have to say about it.
Appreciate it, Brad.
Right on.
902-405-6000. It's interesting because I hear one of the arguments about the cap was that international students, and I'm not going to say all international students, I just dislike painting entire groups of people with one brush, but the argument was that international students, some of them were using the international student visa as a fast track to Canadian citizenship. But if Brad's correct, and I'm not going to doubt him, he said that a majority of the students that he knew we're not staying in Canada, we're going to the United States, then it kind of defeats the argument, doesn't it? Let's take another break, and then Jim and Chris, you're on the line. You'll be up next right after the break. You're listening to the Todd Veinotte Show. I'm Dan Ahlstrand. Back in minutes.
Thanks.
Welcome back. Open hour continues for the next few minutes. A few lines are open. 902-405-6000. As promised, we welcome Jim to the show. Jim, how are you?
Not too bad, Dan. Yourself?
Not too bad. How goes the campaign for mayor, Mr. Hoskins?
Well, it's good. I'm the only candidate, by the way, that wants a moratorium on bike lanes. That's well known. At least I hope it is. But I heard your comment this morning when I was campaigning about 20% so far that have voted by phone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and that's very low. And I think that what might happen, I hate to make these kind of predictions because I do count on voters to vote, we might be in the area of 36% by the time this gets over. But having said that, I'm running because I heard Pam Lovelace on the radio this morning about the bike lanes and what have you. I don't want those two councillors that are on council at the present time to go back and continue to do more damage. When it comes to Mr. Fillmore, he's a career politician. I think he has some good ideas and not so good ideas. So I think we need somebody in there that's not a career politician. So, of course, I'm speaking for myself. I would ask that all your listeners that are listening, if you haven't voted, get out, pick a candidate, and go and vote. Because, boy, if you lose that right to vote, you're going to regret it down the road. But that comment about the $15 million and 17% cost to the city, when we debated that with Steve Murphy, I'll say it again, those two councillors did not tell the public that they had approved the resolution the night before. I'm sick and tired of the misinformation or the no information and the misleading information that politicians are given. You think that's enough for today? I got to get back out campaigning.
Jim, very quickly before you get back on there, one question. You've been campaigning, as I understand it, from like Sheet Harbor all the way to Hubbard's.
Oh, my God, yes.
What is the number one issue that you're coming across?
In that area?
No, in whole. What do you think is the top?
Whole?
Yeah.
Definitely are people that are living on the grass in a tent. Seriously, the homeless is the big issue. Every now and then something else will surface, but it's the homeless, and that's my number one issue too. So anybody supporting Jim Hoskins, I got to get them off the grass, and I'll do my goddamn best to do it.
Jim, I appreciate it. Have a good one.
You too.
902-405-6000 certainly is a straight shooter. Doesn't pull any punches, does he? Anyway, 902-405-6000. It's interesting because, as you well know, and I think we still have a couple more candidates that have booked some time with us on the program, and we've been doing this now for, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. It's interesting because I ask pretty much all of them that same question, and I get different answers, which is kind of weird, isn't it? Some say that it's the homelessness issue, like Jim said. Some say it's the transportation and transit issue. Some say it's communication. But it seems to be that it's normally there's a main issue, right? And it's what everybody talks about. Polling data showing that homelessness was the number one issue heading into the campaign. That's backed off a little bit, and transportation and transit has kind of moved up to the top. But it's interesting, isn't it? Just an observation from a humble man to another. It's weird that there's just so much difference in opinion on what the top issue is between candidates. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that probably is a good thing, that everybody's not kind of focusing on the same talking point and moving on. 902-405-6000. That's 902-405-6000. There are a few open lines if you want to get a quick hitter in before the top of the hour. Let's go back to the phones. We welcome Chris to the show. Chris, how are you?
Hey, Dan, not bad. How's life in the big chair treating you?
I am keeping it warm. Can't wait till Todd comes back.
I hear you, brother. Next time you're talking to him, let him know that Chris misses his voice on the radio, and I wish him nothing but the best in his battle.
I think we all have the same sentiment. Chris, what's on your mind today?
This thing with India. Of course, India is guilty of sin. They are, and if anybody's surprised by that, then they don't keep up with things. India is a major player. Well, it's emerging as a major player. Anybody's watching the international scene, they know that they're an up and coming nation. They're flexing their muscles, same as the rest of them, and it's got a long history of the major players meddling in other people's affairs and whacking their own citizens on foreign soil. You got to look at Israel. Israel does it all the time. Russia, same thing. United States, yep. They're all guilty of it. There's no safe place on this planet. If they want to reach out and flick your light switch out, they're going to do it. So let's not deceive ourselves and say, well, there could be a possibility that this is just Canada flexing political points to curry some favor with the voters. They are guilty, and you're not going to get them to admit to it. So basically, we're at an impasse right now. But I think as a solution, if we wanted to hold out an olive branch to India and say, if you guys play nice over here, we'll send you back all those people you're missing. I mean,
well, I don't know about that, Chris. You know that Canada has a, and I mentioned this during our interview, has a vibrant community of people that have come from India or have relations in India, and I think they're an important part of the community. That all being said. That all being said, Chris, I will say that, you're right, that this is not just an Indian government alone thing. But the part about the whole thing that scares me is that this is alleged to have gone up as high as the ambassador's office. So, that is kind of freaky to me.
Well, it isn't to me, Dan, like I said, because if you study other countries like Israel, look what happened after the Munich Olympic massacre. They sent their hit squads out to cover the globe, and they took out every one of those players. And that had to have been sanctioned at the highest levels of the Israeli government. That wasn't just some branch of the government saying, "Okay, we're going to get a little payback here." No, that would have had to have been signed off on by a head of state. And the same as Russia when the fellow that they poisoned with the plutonium tea.
Yep. Or the doorknob.
Yeah. That wasn't something that somebody just cooked up. No, this foreign meddling and dealing with their citizens on foreign soil, that goes right to the highest levels of all governments. So, and the United States is complicit in that too. They've done their fair share of reaching out and taking people out that they perceived as a national security threat.
Chris, just very quickly, do you think that by Canada doing what it's doing and shining a fairly large spotlight on it, do you think that maybe stops it for a bit?
It's certainly going to drive them a little bit further underground. I don't think it's going to stop it, but it'll certainly. They're going to give pause to see what they did wrong, because the only thing that they think they did wrong is they got caught.
I hear you.
Yeah,
Chris, I appreciate it.
You have a good day, Dan.
You too. 902-405-6000. The last word today goes to Gary. Gary, how are you?
Not too bad, Dan. Thanks for taking my call. Just a plug for Jim Hoskins for mayor. If you want to really know a candidate, you should probably meet Jim. I met both him and Andy Fillmore. Andy Fillmore comes across as a very personal guy, But if he shows up on your doorstep, that's how he presents himself. But I had 3 different issues with that man, and he never had the time of day for me. So there you go.
Gary, appreciate it.
Okay, take care.
And I appreciate each and every one of you for taking time out of your day today to join the program, dial the numbers, and have a conversation. It would be pretty boring if you didn't do it. My thanks, as always, to Vanessa Vandenez on the other side of the glass for keeping things up and going in somewhat of an orderly fashion. A big show planned for you tomorrow. We're going to talk a little bit about youth involvement in voting. We're going to talk about a couple of youth-related initiatives tomorrow. Student Vote is an initiative that happens in classrooms in high schools where kids have a mock vote, they have a mock election, they go through the whole process, which I think is vitally important to then get the next generation of voters engaged in that process. So we'll have that conversation tomorrow. Also, it's a hacking competition, and I saw that and went, "What? Can you do that?" But apparently it's legal. Everything's above board. It's called Harbor Hacks. And we're going to have a grade 12 student from Citadel High joining us tomorrow. She's coming into the studio. She's really excited about it. I am too. And she's going to tell us about this hacking competition that is the kids are going to get involved in here over the next couple of weeks. Have a fantastic day. Stay out of trouble. And remember, be kind to one another.